Hey guys, it's Spiff. Today I'm going to talk about Captain Kidd. Now, I made a previous video on the worst generation. I did not talk about Kidd only because my video is already becoming 20 minutes long and there just really wasn't enough time, and I felt I would not be able to do Kidd justice with the amount of time, so I'm making my own video on what I think about Captain Kidd. Now, I know Oda likes to do this, but I think Captain Eustace Kidd is based off Captain William Kidd, who was a huge pirate in the late 1600s, and he was known for his savagery and how he would string up people and torture them. And this was known from accounts of survivors and people who managed to escape. But that sounds a lot like the Kidd we know in One Piece. Now, after the time skip, when we first saw Kidd, we found out that he had, I think it was a 420 million bounty, just above Luffy. Once again, he was just above Luffy before the time skip. He's just above Luffy after. They have said that just because he's above Luffy doesn't mean he's more powerful. It just means that he's a bigger threat. They've said, he tortures innocent people and just does these savage acts, so that's why his bounty is so high. And we know that he formed an alliance with Apu, Hawkins, and Killer. And we see when the alliance meets up and they're talking, when they find out that Luffy, is running amok, they state that Shanks is their alliance's target. When they find out that Luffy must be clearly targeting Kaido, and Shanks is like, well, our target is red-haired Shanks, and a lot of people think that Shanks and Kidd must have some connection because both their hairs are red. I don't necessarily agree with that, but a lot of people seem to think that that theory has a lot of backbone. But they state that their target is Shanks, and I do believe that there must be a reason for this. I don't think that their alliance just kind of got together and picked names out of a hat. That's ridiculous. There must be a reason. We don't know yet, but we do know that they were targeting red-haired Shanks. I would also like to point out that we do know that when Kidd first kind of came into the New World and kind of started cracking skulls and making a name for himself, that he was sinking some of Big Mom's ships. We saw some of Big Mom's crew talking about it earlier when they were saying in Fishman Island that they needed to take the treasure from Luffy because they lost all those ships. When they're talking to Big Mom, and they lost their ships because Kidd sank them. So we do know that Kidd has sort of picked a fight with Big Mom. We don't know if that's going to go anywhere, but I feel like the fact that we were given that information, Oda might, come back to that later. But then we see the entire alliance. They're meeting at their hideout, and all of a sudden, who comes crashing down? Kaido, right at their hideout. They're freaking out. They're about to have to fight a Yonko, and even though it is just the Yonko and not their commanders or anything, Kaido just wipes the floor with them. He completely just obliterates their alliance. Now, not very much longer, we find out that Apu is working for Kaido. Now, I don't know what this means. We don't know if Apu is already working for Kaido and just kind of spying on Kidd's alliance, or if Apu became Kaido's subordinate later. We don't. It very much seems that he was working for Kaido the whole time, and we don't really know anything about what Apu wants. And you don't really go to the New World unless you kind of want something. So maybe maybe he was going to the New World to team up with Kaido the whole time. We don't know. It's still too early to speculate, but we do know that Apu has an established relationship at this point with Kaido, because we see him talking to him on the Den Den Mushi, saying it's taken care of, Lord Kaido. So I don't know what that means, but we'll find out. Now, we've also recently found out that Hawkins is also working for Kaido. And this one, I do believe, I think that Hawkins is still in an alliance with Kid. I think Hawkins only kind of joined Kaido because Kaido saw that he had he was a strong character, so he was kind of like, hey, join my crew. And Hawkins was kind of just like, you know what, I don't want to get whooped right here. So I think he's kind of just joining Kaido's crew to keep, to save his own skin. But I do think that he is going to realign himself with Captain Kid when Kid eventually launches his counterattack. Now, we haven't seen anything about Killer since Kaido attacked the hideout, but I do believe that Killer is in Wano. I think he's been gathering information in Wano this whole time. We don't know what Killer looks like without the mask, so he could be any assortment of characters that we have seen or are going to see, and we wouldn't even know. I think he is going to team up with Zoro and his whole kind of quest to unite the samurai and get the samurai on their team. I think Killer's going to kind of stumble upon Zoro or stumble upon some other samurai, and they're all going to end up teaming up, and I think they're going to ultimately be the ones to take down the Shogun, Zoro, Killer, and the rest of the samurai. So we know Killer is the kind of voice of reason in Kid's circle. We've seen Killer, be strategical. He kind of talks down Kid from his anger, saying, listen, Kid, we need these guys on our side. We need to work with them if we're going to bring down these Yonko. We're not strong enough. So Killer clearly is able to kind of keep a cool head. He's smart. He's powerful. He's got a 200 million bounty, so he's definitely, no pushover. And I think that'll definitely help in the whole, kind of mission to unite the samurai. 'Cause we know Zoro isn't exactly the brightest banana in the bunch, so I think Killer will kind of be a good, balance for Zoro in Zoro's mission to bring the samurai here, because Killer is able to kind of, think and strategize and whatnot. I'm sorry. So I think Killer is going to play a huge role in the whole strategy part of bringing down Kaido and bringing down the Shogun. Now, Kid himself is a beast. Just a beast. Like I said before, I always kind of think, like, when I'm trying to think what is Kid capable of, I think of, Magneto and the things we've seen him do in Marvel Comics before. Kid's ability is strikingly similar, so he's capable of doing those same things. He could, put a piece of metal through someone's head, or if someone's wearing any metal at all, then Kid would be able to manipulate that. And his awakening, God, we can only imagine what that would do. Kid is a monster. He is currently in prison with Luffy, in Kaido's prison, and he is keeping up with Luffy perfectly with only one arm and no devil fruit. Now, I know Luffy also has no devil fruit, but Luffy is a freak of nature and has both of his arms. And Kid is keeping up with this guy with only one arm, and he has been in the prison for a while, so he has been beaten and tortured, and he is just kind of, challenging Luffy. He's still just defiant and just standing with Luffy on an equal level, which just makes him, in my mind, just such a beast. One of the characters I have underestimated the most. Kid is a monster. Now, obviously, Kid is going to play a humongous role in this arc. I do think that Kid will ultimately team up with Luffy and Law. I think those three will be the three to kind of give Kaido his finishing blow. I think those three will kind of team up. It'll be kind of like a parallel of the Sabaody arc, kind of, One Piece repeating itself. I think, and it would be irony because they say at the Sabaody arc, like, oh, next time we see each other, we're not going to be allies, we're going to be enemies, so it would be funny to see them again, but teaming up again, and we know that him and Luffy are in prison together. It would only make sense that him and Luffy team up to get out. And I think we've seen that Raizo, it's been hinted that Raizo is going to be the one to rescue them from the jail. How he's going to do that, we don't even know how big this jail is or who's in it or what kind of defenses are behind it. But with his sea stone cuffs and only one arm, he's extremely limited to the things he can do. But once he gets out of the sea stone, he is in a world of hurt because we have, Wano has a lot of metal in it. There's swords everywhere. A lot of these people are swordsmen. How is a swordsman going to fight someone with the magnet fruit? So in a place like Wano, Kid is just going to dominate. Now, a lot of people have been suggesting that they think a training arc is coming because, Luffy got one shot by Kaido. He definitely, in Gear 4th, he needs some training to fight Kaido. I don't think that he's necessarily going to, run off and go train and come fight Kaido, but I think kind of him fighting, Luffy and Kid kind of fighting with each other is going to provide the boost of strength that both of them need to stand toe to toe with Kaido. I think that Kid and Luffy kind of competing with each other is going to be the necessary training for both of them to kind of power up and be able to team up, because we saw Luffy and Kid what they could do together at this Sabaody, but that's when they just met each other. Now that they know each other's powers and will have fought together a decent amount in the prison, Kid and Luffy, I think, are going to kind of have like a certain flow with each other because they do have a lot of similarities between the two. So if those two can get in sync with each other, and I think Kid, being in the New World for longer than Luffy has, Kid's going to know things, Kid's going to maybe have abilities that he can teach to Luffy, to help Luffy power up and vice versa. Because we know a lot of Luffy's greatest abilities come from watching other people fight, and then he kind of mimics those abilities, but with his own abilities. So I think that's how he's going to power up here, and I also think that's how Kid is going to power up, is because they're going to kind of bounce off each other, so to speak, pun intended, Luffy. But I think they're going to kind of learn from each other and learn to kind of use their powers together and learn new techniques that they can use to bring Kaido down together along with Law. I don't think that Kid and Luffy are necessarily going to break out of prison right away. I think it's going to be a little bit before they get out of prison, but when they do get out of prison, I think the whole final battle is going to kind of be close by the time that Kid and Luffy get out of prison and regroup with their alliance. By then, they'll be ready to fight. I think Kid and Luffy are going to defeat Kaido after Kaido fights with Big Mom, and they're ultimately going to win, which would be a great way for Luffy and Kid to both get huge bounties, because I think Kid is going to play a much larger role in the story later. So I do think that it will be partly Kid who helps bring down Kaido, which will kind of elevate him from the worst generation to a very realistic candidate for this new line of Yonkos. And after Wano is over, I do think that Kid will still continue to play his part in this greater war. I do think he will participate in the next battle after Wano, which I think will take place between, I think it'll be Shanks, Blackbeard, Luffy, and the Marines kind of all in this battle, and I do think Kid will have a standing in there. I don't necessarily think he'll be trying to participate in this war, so to speak. I think he will be there to kind of battle Shanks because they can't really have Kid being a good guy. So I think that's how they will kind of transition him back into bad guy status after Wano. I think he will attack Shanks when Shanks is vulnerable, which I think will end up leading to Shanks' downfall. I don't think that Kid will be the one to defeat him, but I think because Shanks will be distracted with Kid, that'll be an opening for Blackbeard to step in and defeat Shanks. And when that happens, that'll also kind of set up the fight between Kid and Luffy. Because Luffy is going to be like, you know what, I have to fight you at some point anyways, since you're also trying to become Pirate King. And you because of you, Blackbeard was able to kill, you know, Luffy's hero, that's Shanks. That's, you know, the I do think that Luffy is going to defeat Kid, and then obviously Zoro is going to defeat Killer, because at a certain point, you know, Luffy's got to continue progressing, and when you're at that level, you know, you got to fight people who are kind of, you know, world famous to get higher. You know, Luffy is now considered one of the Yonko. The only way he's going to get a higher bounty is by fighting. I mean, the other Yonko at this point will be gone by the time he fights Kid, so the only, you know, way to go even higher than that is to fight the people who are now contending for the new Yonko positions, and I think that's where Luffy is going to fight Captain Kid, is after Captain Kid's had a hand in bringing down Shanks. Captain Kid might, you know, after Shanks is gone, even though he didn't directly defeat them, try to think that he's an emperor because he helped bring down Shanks, and then Luffy will put a quick end to that, and I think that is where Captain Kid's story will end in the One Piece arc, or just a One Piece story total, and, you know, Zoro will bring down Killer, which will kind of gear him up for the fight versus Shiryu. So those are my thoughts so far on Captain Kid. If there's something I might have missed, let me know. Otherwise, leave your comments about what you thought of this video in the comments down below. Let me know. I'm always down for a good discussion. Thank you for watching this video. Take it easy.